Today is Monday, August the 12th, 2019. I now call this San Juan Economic Development meeting slash workshop to order. It is 5:30. Our first item on the agenda is our roll call. I can start with my right.
Reyes,
Leroy Gonzalez.
Criselda Palacios,
Art Rodriguez. Sanchez, Vice President.
Arturo Guajardo Jr. Neto Guajardo, board member.
Ariel Garza.
Pedro Contreras.
Thank you all. Our next item on the agenda is our public comments. Do we have anybody signed up for public comments today? No? Okay, then we'll move on to our next item. Number 4 is our Executive Director's Report. Mr. Rodriguez, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. On the Executive Director's Report, I have a lot of discussion to do, but it'll mainly be an executive session, with your permission, to discuss all the pending projects that need attention. And I'd rather do it in executive session for, obvious reasons, the way we should be doing it. But I do have a lot once we go in there.
Not a problem. I was under the impression tonight's meeting was just a workshop, but I did see meeting slash workshop. So do we have anything pending for the meeting side of it? Is it all of these items, are these under a regular meeting or workshop under number 5?
Actually, we do have several discussions, and that was on clarity of sales tax revenue coming in, which has to do with the budget. Also, the expenditures that should be accounted for on special project amounts. There was really no clarity that I could find. I did have a conversation with the financial director, Mr. Leroy, and I don't have what I really need to be able to look at this budget.
Without venturing off, without going through the agenda, so shall we go into number 5 then? If we don't,
we're
not going to go into your director's report right now?
Sure.
Okay. Then we'll go on to item number 5A, which is discussion on clarity on sales tax for budget year. Now you can address that.
Okay, we have a complete running amount.
President, I got a question in reference to on the side. Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes, sir.
reading the line item under revenue sales tax, am I reading this correctly? We're going to have $40,000 less than last year?
We are still not, we're missing the amount for August and for September in this budget year. Financial director was able to secure, and I'll let him speak for himself on that, secure the amount for the month of August, which I think he had as of last Friday. He may correct me on that, but I think he's already got that. And we're still missing September, and he won't have that ready. We can estimate on the amount based on the average of the previous months.
Okay.
And if we do that, it would be in the range of about 160,000.
In addition to, I'm sorry.
In addition
to the 930?
Yes, it would be about 80,000 plus for August and about 80,000 plus for September. Now, it could range higher. It could be 85 or it could be 81, but a fair balance would say that we would have at least 80,000 in August and 80,000 in September, going by the previous months and the amounts.
They're a little bit.
So back to item A. So we're on clarity for the budget on sales tax. Were you going to present something on that or no? I mean, it's on here, or do we just move on?
We can get an explanation from the finance director if he's able to do that right now.
That's what we listed on the agenda. Discussion on clarity on sales tax for the budget year. So what are we talking about there? Somebody going to clarify something for us?
Well, the thing is, we still haven't gotten the sales tax for the month of August, which should be in this week, and then September.
Okay, so
what
that's
he
what this
budgeted
item was
for-
about, that we're lacking 2 months still.
Yes, we're budgeting 940 based on what has come in, and we estimated the last 2 months, which is August and September,
Okay,
about 86,000 or so.
any other questions from the board regarding that item? On clarification for our sales tax for this upcoming year?
Yes, because it scared me. I saw the numbers there and.
So we're lacking 2 months, is
Okay,
what they're
great,
saying.
great.
So item B is discussion on budget 2018-19 and 2019-20.
Correct. Do you wish to go line item per line item?
Whoever you prefer to get into it, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay. The, this was, of course, for category 3,200, sales tax revenue. It also accounted for revenue type 37, other revenue, and it accounted for revenue type 3,800, other financing sources, and it accounted for revenue type, other financing, 3,900. And so the only thing I can do right now is estimate the amount that we would be receiving, okay? And that's what we just got through doing. Second page, page 2, if you'll flip over. It has salaries of employees. Now, I'll bring your attention to section 24-571, 1030, and on budget detail, there is an amount. If you go down, it'll have the administrative assistant salary, it'll have the executive director salary, it'll show an increase, and the increase was only placed there subject to approval. We're going to go into the middle of everyone's anniversary of employment, and I placed that amount only as having it on the budget, and all of this is not done unless it's subject to approval by the board. Okay, there's an additional 12,000 showing. That doesn't mean that people will get an automatic pay raise, okay? It just means that I need to have something on the budget should the board decide that in the middle of the year, during the anniversary of the employee, we could give a certain amount for pay raise, okay? So it's not firm and not saying $12,000 is an increase that people will get who are employed under EDC. It's just an amount that's there, okay? Just to show that we have something in the budget in the event that we can do that, and the board is in favor of doing such a thing, then there's an amount that we can pull funds from without having to amend the budget and go to another line item and reduce an amount. That's the only reason it's there.
Subject for approval, correct?
Always subject to approval by this board.
Is our intention to adopt a budget today, or we're just merely
No,
gonna go over it?
it's a simple workshop,
Okay.
and just as why it looks the way it is right now.
Okay, any other changes on there that we should be noted, aside from the increase on the salary that you're adding?
If we go down to category 30, and if we look at internet services at the bottom, on the column that it was, the amount was estimated was at 2,500. Looking at the billing that we get from Spectrum on the month, we would be short, and we need an additional 500 added to that. So instead of 2,500 as it's listed, it would be 3,000. If we go to, I don't know if everybody found that section where it is. Okay. It's an increase that it has to go up because that's the Spectrum fees went up, so it's.
We did save on our lease though, right? So we should see a reduction somewhere in there. Is that correct or no?
We have some of reduction from, we'll get to the lease.
Okay.
But I do see, Mr. Rodriguez, you've budgeted 35,000 for rental land and building.
Yes, and we will go there, and I'll show you the amounts that were discussed and how it appears for approval. The other section was I know the promotional expense, and that was on category 90, miscellaneous. The intent here is that when we get into the area of promotions. I did promise that we would have light item 1, light item 2, and that's to show each time what has been approved, the amount, and the running total of what's left for that category to be applicable to other projects. But we will,
We had requested that every time there's an item like that on our agenda, to show us a running balance.
yes, sir. And
What's left?
And it will be there.
Okay.
The category just shows right now as promotional expense, but once something comes before you, in the next meeting, you will see it as line item 1, the amount approved, and a reduction in the amount available for promotion expense.
Reference to the dues and memberships, what exactly are you referring to? What dues and memberships?
Under dues and memberships, as executive director, I will be required to keep up certain training, and that will be necessary training that involves public funds and public fund investments, and it may require travel. If we can't get it local, then it'll require travel and a certain amount of expense. And that would go for everyone that was traveling under.
That's the
under
same
EDC.
amount that we had on there last year. That didn't change.
I believe you had dropped it to, at one point, to 17, and I brought it back up to 19. Simply because I know that whatever travel you did last year, now you
No, on
got me.
dues and memberships,
Yes,
it's, I see 4,000.
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Oh, and dues and memberships, I'm still looking at other
Yeah,
expenses, yeah.
so that was last year's the same as this year.
Only such expenses and that would require an EDC director to have, okay? I'm not, and every time that anything comes up as far as dues, again, I present it to you for discussion, and the board would be deciding whether yes or no. And you did have that 4,000 there before, so.
Advertising, you went down $5,000.
I hope to do that in a different category, and I might come back with you and say, look, this will be a promotional expense, and it'll promote the city, it'll promote EDC, and at that point, you know, when I present it to you, again, it'll be a decision that the board makes, whether yes or no. But I do intend to bring a lot of projects, and I do intend to bring you ideas on how to promote the city and seek your approval on that. So we could either leave them as advertisement or promotional expense, as you so desire on this.
So your intention is to move it from there and throw it to promotional?
Yes.
Okay. Down the line, we got office equipment's the same, office supplies increased some.
That was pretty much, it remains pretty much the same. We went down, Martha and I went down the list on the expenses and what was allowed before, and we checked for balances, and I know that in category 40, I think it remained pretty much the same. And then, of course, on capital outlay, we have some equipment that's on lease agreements, and subject to remaining with the same equipment as much. I still need to cover the lease agreements on those. So on capital outlay, that's category 50. There was debt service, and I had questions on the bond principal, and I had questions on the loan principal for the Texas leverage, and I've got questions on the bond interest and the loan interest on Texas leverage, and those were questions that I was trying to get clarity from finance on this, and we'll be in discussion with them a little bit within hopefully the next week. I know that he's working on the city budget as well, but I needed clarity on that.
By when does this budget need to be adopted?
It'll be the same. We need to have it done long in advance before the end of September. So
Before September 1st?
No, but
Before October 1st.
So I would hope to have everything before you, no later than maybe mid-September, and get it with enough time to approve, which would give probably Leroy enough time to work the city budget along with the EDC budget. I don't know how much he's got more to do, but since he is our accounting expert here,
Right.
I do need to give him time, so.
Right. We have here on the 90,000, it's that the Texas Leverage Fund was apparently paid off and refinanced it. The $90,000 and the interest is the amount that we have to pay for a bond. I think believe it's 2007 that we refinanced, and the Texas Leverage together.
Those are the things that I need to understand, because just by looking at it, I can't
That's
tell that.
that's why it's done.
Right,
the
and in
line
all
item.
fairness, I mean, you're on the job, what, 2 weeks? So then it's time for budget, so I would expect to work hand in hand with Leroy and Mr. Arjona, who was at the helm here for a while. At least during this year, they probably have to hold your hand through this.
Well, definitely, because I don't understand what it's applicable to unless I have the paperwork to show me what was spent and where it went, and that's what I don't have right now. But I will have it before September 15th, okay, for clarity. For my clarity, as well as being able to clarify and understand it and be able to explain that to you. At this point, it's numbers that I'm looking at without documentation supporting it to see exactly what it's about. So this is my first view.
In
at
the
it.
end, I mean, the bottom line is the number's the same as last year, right?
Yeah.
The total, what you're proposing to adopt, the total budget doesn't fluctuate at all, even with the increase that you just mentioned and a couple of variances here and there, but in the end, it's the same number.
Hopefully it will be, yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Once we see the numbers, then I can give you a real definite answer on that one, so. I just had a discussion just before the meeting started on category 90. And I've got some project total amounts under commitments, and I will definitely, again, look at those. We've got those by project names and dollar amounts, which that'll be a discussion as well in executive session for you to look at those numbers and those projects and the remaining balances that have to be made. There's one project, especially right now, that is still under a 380 agreement that hasn't been completed yet, but will be discussed in executive session with you as well and with Attorney Palacios. City Manager Arjona and I have met with the parties that are involved in that particular project, and we looked at the 380 agreement together, and we'll be able to discuss it with you together in executive session as well.
Is there any other questions on the budget? It's such a broad deal, and the way this agenda was posted, we've got C as discussion and breakdown on categories for budget line items, and then D, discussion on salary changes for 1920, which we already touched upon, right?
That's correct.
So we've already covered.
That was the only
C and D.
$12,000 difference on that line item, and the explanation was that it's just an amount to have in the event of, and it's subject to approval by this board. And it's in no way a definite of an increase. It's just a line item that's been budgeted in the event of.
Father, I have one more question.
Yes, sure.
On page 5 out of the 8, wetlands project, this is just to tell us that the 40,000, the total activity has been dissolved. We're done with this wetlands project. Is that what that's telling us, Mr. Rodriguez?
The wetlands. What's already done? The project is on Yes.
I'll let Finance Director Leroy answer that.
Yes, sir, it was done.
We're done. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why it's here.
There was no budget there.
Thank you.
What was that?
Yes, it's dissolved already.
No budget for that?
No budget for that.
After 2017.
We're good with that.
Yes, yes, good.
Any other questions, comments regarding the budget? Aside from what we're gonna discuss in executive session? If not, we'll move on to, item E, which is discussion and possible action on accepting the new rate agreement for the Economic Development Corporation lease.
On the last meeting, the board did ask me to contact Mr. Bob Trevino. And I contacted Mr. Trevino and we discussed the lease agreement. It took him a little while to get back with me, but in review of this, the first figures that had come across were an increase up to $28.80 per month. After discussions, we were at $25.20 when we first entered into discussion on this lease agreement. And from the $28.80, after complete discussion with Mr. Trevino, he did reduce it to $26.40, which drops it down from what he had indicated at the first round. So he is hoping, and we are hoping, I guess, that this agreement will be for a year if it's signed, and it would be at the rate of $26.40 per month.
You said it would be for a year if it's signed by
Well,
us or him?
The board agrees to
Okay.
this amount. Nothing has been signed yet. It's all
But
discussion.
you're gonna bring that to us, is that today? Is this for action today?
We could do it.
Yeah, it is for possible action today.
Yeah.
So let's go back on, our old lease was for how long? Mr. Arjona, do you remember? Was it 2 years? Okay, 2 years. And we were at $28.80. So now we are renewing. I'm sorry? Oh, so it went up.
It went up to
Oh.
2,640, the difference of?
That's what we're talking about, maybe
yeah.
getting some,
Mr.
Went
Ojeda,
up on first
I'd like to say
notice.
this real quick.
we'd like to save.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, we give a directive to speak to Mr. Trevino and go ahead and close the deal with the 25-20 for 1 year. Wasn't this item already discussed and it was decided that we would do the year? Maybe it was not 25-20, maybe it was more.
I think it was the 25, like you said, after, you're right, after speaking with Mr. Trevino and letting him know that.
But I understood that we weren't gonna see it again. It was more like we had already decided, like, this is what we want, ask them that we're gonna approve, that we've decided on that.
Well, it's okay to give the directive at 25-20, but if the landlord doesn't accept 25-20, he's coming back to 26-40. I guess that's why he's with
Well,
us.
did it happen? Did you guys discuss that
I
with
don't
him?
know, because that's why we wanna wait to find out that we're gonna keep for a year, and it was gonna be 2640.
So what we have before us today is a 1-year new contract for the lease at 26-40. We can say no if we want. That's why it's here before us today. We were at 25-20 for the past 2
So it
years.
went up 100
per year.
and something bucks.
I don't know what our.
We're
what
still gonna need a
alternatives
place.
are at
we-
this point.
No, I mean, my question was there a
There's not too many
discussion?
alternatives.
Did anybody make contact with Mr. Trevino in reference to what was asked last
Yes,
time?
sir, I did.
Okay, and what did he
Aye.
say? No, 26-40 instead?
Yeah, he
We
came back.
sat down, we discussed it at length. He gave me his best price. He told me why it needed to go up, and as he was viewing it, I explained to him that my directive was to come in and talk to him and try to reach an understanding. The understanding that we reached, or he came down to, was he lowered it from the 28.80 to 26.40. So he's kind of meeting us halfway on the amount.
But where's that 2880 number coming from? That's where I'm lost, because that was never a number. Oh, that was his proposed increase?
It was a reverse increase.
During that same discussion?
Yes.
Or
Not-
was it
not
on
with
that?
my discussion, that was a previous discussion
Oh, it was a-
already.
Yeah, it was already discussed.
Really?
Yeah.
We had like different options. We had different options.
There was
And-
like 3
and-
different options.
So
Okay.
what we instructed was go back and say 1 year, one more year at 25. So what I understand now is he said, no, I'll meet you halfway, 26.
That's
So now
correct.
we need to find out what options do we have. Do we go with the 26, or is there another option for us to go elsewhere?
Got room at City Hall?
What options do we have?
Right now,
I
we're-
remember we
my-
discussed some, and vaguely, but.
Yeah, at this point, there's no additional room at the city hall. So we have no other option but to, I guess, extend the lease for another additional year.
we talked about,
Garza, go ahead.
we talked about, and then I might be wrong, but we did talk about professionalism, that we needed a place that would be satisfied to whatever people he would bring in. Because I had brought up the portables, of course, portables were pretty messy, you know, you're gonna have to put a lot of money to it. We could have put it back here and saved some money. But I just say, let's go for that 1 year. I think the city hall should be done in about a year.
A
Mr.
year and
Arjona.
a couple of more months after that.
And I mean, it went up $100 and something. It's not much. It could have been worse, you know, so.
I think that, I mean, there's no other alternative
There
at
was-
this point, to be honest with you, so.
So I'll make the motion to accept the contract as is.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to accept the 1-year lease agreement with Mr. Bob Trevino at $26.40 per month. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item F, discussion and possible action for Economic Development Corporation travel and training policy, commit or payback.
Mr. President,
Yes,
if I
sir.
may, I was the one that requested that item on the board, and being the reason, and I know Mr. Villescaz here doesn't know, and probably Mr. Lenny
Villegas.
does, Villegas, I'm sorry. We've had travel issues in the past where people commit to going on travel, going to take a class. It's either by ground, and they're given monies, or by air, and they're paid in full, expense. But these people don't show up to the class, so the EDC has taken a loss in 2 or 3 people that we've lost nearly $1,400 in plane tickets. And I don't think that's fair for the EDC, that's their ticket, we can't use them, they're the only ones that can use them, they have a year to use it, and even if they don't use it, it's lost money. So I put this item, if you're gonna commit to go to a trip or a class, then you're committed and obligated to pay back whatever you owe to the EDC within the 72 hours required.
Garza, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that we're following the city of San Juan's travel policy, and it addresses all those issues in there, does it not?
Yes, it does.
Right? That's what I
So-
remember reading.
Right?
Well, we might be following it, but we never got monies back from 2 individuals.
Well, then that's just a lack of follow-through on our
So-
part.
And
Uh,
let
But,
me-
but the policy does cover that.
And let me just say that it's a little bit vague in the sense about, let's say that like the voucher airplane. So it is a little bit vague, so it's not like, it's there in writing. We're waiting on the comprehensive plan to be established and approved. And once, all of that is going to be included once we get it from the consultant that is working on that.
So you anticipate that vagueness to be eliminated
It
from
should
that
be there.
policy, and it
Yes,
should
sir.
be crystal clear, and if
Right.
we continue to follow that policy, then we should be covered.
We should be covered with
I
that.
mean, we couldn't make our own policy. I mean, that wouldn't be hard for you to make up a policy for the travel arrangements, would it?
We could, it's just that.
Just have a
the-
little bylaw?
But if you look at our bylaws,
They're the same.
our bylaws read that we're gonna use their
Right.
Their
policies.
bylaws.
And so we go back and revisit our bylaws.
We can do the bylaws, but like you're saying, it does, bring it back to the city, so the city will supersede whatever it's on your bylaws. The changes will be taking place.
Out of curiosity, Mr. Guajardo, Mr. Arjona, how has the city ever seen a situation like the one we've been through with the airplane tickets before? How have you all handled it, if you've seen one?
So in the past 3 years that I've been here, I haven't seen any of that at the,
Okay.
Actually, I have. I have, where the city neighbor where I used to work at, it did occur where this certain person got ill at the time and couldn't attend those things. You just can't predict, Mother Nature, you know, when you get sick or so forth, you know. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Wadley, you can't actually force anybody to pay back if they're ill or anything like that. They're just part of part of the deal,
Loss.
right? It's a loss, you know. Of course, obviously, this individual did get sick, you know, and we can't force him to pay something back.
Correct.
And that's done through, we actually did some follow-up through TML situation, because I know there were some sticky situations where they wanted them to pay back, but based on TML policies, or actually the insurance told us that that's just kind of what we were. we'd take a
Basically
risk.
out of our hands.
Well,
Like,
yeah, getting sick, or an
Right.
emergency in the family is, I mean,
Right.
that's understandable, but when you're not going because, and they see you somewhere else, or you're doing something else,
Right.
I mean, come on, that's money that we're losing.
So I hear your concern, Mr. Garza, and I think the entire board does as well.
I agree.
So are we okay with continuing to follow the city's policy now that it's gonna be clarified a little bit more detail? That vagueness is, it sounds like, or do we wanna proceed to do our
No,
own?
I think we can follow the city policy as long as it clarifies that, with the exception of if you're sick, ill, death in the family, it's understandable that we can't predict that, but just because you don't wanna go, or because your spouse couldn't make it, I mean, that's out of the question. That's, you're.
I agree with that. I mean, that's just money wasted altogether, and our job here in governance, and whether it be city or EDC, should be like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
So,
if-
I
if
think maybe
you-
a little bit more, oversight on that and stuff like that, and I think we should be good moving forward. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
Any more discussion on this item? Do we need any action, or we're okay with the city's policy?
I think we'll follow his policy, just, Mr. Juan, if we can clarify it a little bit better too. And
And the bottom line is, we just need to all be personally responsible for
Yeah.
ourselves. That's it. I mean, that's it. Little professional courtesy. We've gotta be frugal with, public money, and that's just the way it is, or else we don't belong here. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. G, discussion and possible action on required banking changes authorizing the CEO, Executive Director, Arturo Rodriguez, to be on the signature card with new elected Board of Directors elected to a seat and to attain a credit card and monetary limit expense for operational business.
Motion to approve, this is pretty routine, or am I incorrect?
It's operational.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second to approve,
Sorry.
the item as submitted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign, motion carries.
We need a second phase to that as well, through the bank. And we need, signatures from President, Vice President, and Treasurer, along with mine. We provided forms in everyone's packet.
Okay,
that
that's
need to be
standard
filled out.
operating
Yes, sir. it
procedure
is.
for us, so we'll make sure we get all that signed for you.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is H, discussion and possible action on changes in executive session language, closed session for consideration and approval.
I remember that at the last meeting, there was a question on the language itself that.
That is correct.
Was a little bit too long.
Well,
I
it
did
was a little-
research, and, a copy has been provided, of course, to Attorney Palacios as well on it. But the language is much shorter, and, and it is in accordance to the.
Does the
government
language
code.
that's proposed here, Chris, meet everything from a legal standpoint? Did you see it, Ms. Palacios?
And then, because there's different sections, so 551.071 is one of them that's consultation with an attorney. So, but among that exception, there's other exceptions, so, like in this instance, if it's all having to do with legal issues that you're seeking legal advice, then that is proper.
Okay. But it's not gonna work as a blanket language for all of our executive session items then, right?
Unless it's all having to do with the
Just
seeking
legal.
advice, yeah.
Okay,
But I mean, like, there's another exception, 551.087, that's having to do with economic negotiations. There's also one with regards to real estate property, so just depending on what,
so Mr. Rodriguez, then perhaps if you just get all of those different sections that she's, and that specific agenda, we'll have to notate the appropriate section of the code, I think is what I'm hearing, right?
Right.
And the reason I had brought this up,
If there's legal issues, then if there's,
Okay.
yeah, you should be fine.
The only reason I had asked him to look into cleaning up that language was because it was just redundant. I don't know if you remember the way that language was, and I always said, man, it sounded silly almost reading it. But look at it. And I have the old language here. If you guys want to hear it, want me to read it just so you can hear how it sounds?
No, Mr. Fajardo, but I will say this, Mr. President, that many times I've found that when we're there discussing, let's say, something about property or something that we don't think we're gonna be using legal, we end up having some legal questions. We'll still be okay with that, Ms. Palacios?
The requirement of the Texas Open Meetings Act is for the presiding officer to announce under which exception you're going into a closed session. So if there's a regular item that's listed on the agenda and you seek advice of counsel, then you can set it aside, right, or just, and say, you know, pursuant to 551-071, we're gonna,
They have that option.
So
Depending on what the options are.
right, you actually add the sections, correct? Okay. So it could be more than one section.
yes.
Got it.
Very good. Then any other questions or comments regarding the executive session language for future agendas? No? We're all clear?
Seems like
Second.
We're good. We don't need any.
we don't need just discussion?
Yeah, just a discussion. Because it's not final yet. I mean, we're gonna
Begin.
continue to work on it.
Depending on the discussion.
Depending on the discussion, how you're gonna list it, you're always gonna check with legal before.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, our next item on the agenda is executive session. We've got consultation with EDC attorney pursuant to Government Code 551071 on pending EDC board for discussion on A, B, C, and D, as listed on the agenda item. It is now 6:07, and we are going into executive session. Before we are out of executive session and we are reconvening into regular session, and considering any action, if any, that we took as a result of our executive session, do we have any action?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to direct Mr. Rodriguez, our director, EDC director, to please seek professional consultant services for our following meeting.
Okay, I've got a motion.
Second.
Giving Mr. Rodriguez a directive to seek professional consultant agreement, and I've got a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next items are adjournment. I got a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is now adjourned.